Surely here with Talis Moon, and I have been going over the vibe of September eclipses, the lunar and the solar. And the first one, the lunar eclipse, looks like some more of the Epstein scandals, Didi scandals, maybe with the joining MK Ultra scandals and the connection, and some sort of a legal debate about choice. Um, that can range to so many places. And again, lunar eclipse affects the people more. I predict there to be a lot of social engineering. Okay, a lot of use of exposed scandals to divert attention, debates about choices from new perspectives. Rahu and Ketu are an 18 degree, which is toxins. So it's kind of like, think about everything toxic. Toxic relationships, toxic beliefs, toxins, toxic welfare, um, toxic debates, and toxins in general. So that's something that I predict for the lunar eclipse. And both in September, and this is just a general vibe, the solar eclipse, however, I call it the great leap backwards. Because all of the rulers of where we are heading, which is Rahu, are closer to Ketu. And we're going to have Mars 29 degrees Libra, applying to square Pluto and applying to ingress into Scorpio. Um, there are things that I'm very, there are things that I'm just looking to see, because it's one of those times where somebody has a transit. They're just a person, but they have a pivotal position, and that can affect the world. Okay, so that's just a part of what is happening even in democracies, and this is something that I don't know what to predict. So there are at least two charts that I identified that's going to be meaningful. Um, and it's very much continuing on the themes of the April 2024 solar eclipse and the lunar eclipses. In general, the themes of Libra and Aries solar eclipses. Okay, so but the proximity of Mercury to Zendaya, and Zendaya, to quote my colleague and teacher Lada Duncheva, is about where we harlot ourselves, and sometimes it's because of no choice. Okay, and again, the lunar eclipse emphasizes the toxic beliefs around choice. And by the way, Jupiter is the great benefic, so believing in choice can get toxic if people fail to identify where they did not have access to choice. In the best case, it can be more access to choice. So I do feel that overall in September, in the eclipse vibes, we are really wanting to move forward, but wherever we set our foot, we are taken back to the same themes that have been accompanying us at least since April 2024 and even April 2023. And for each and every person, it's going to be different themes. On a worldly scale, right after the eclipse, the solar eclipse, which is 21 September, Mars ingresses into Scorpio. And that is a square to Pluto. And that is the beginning of the square that's going to accompany us into it's basically the hard aspect that is the last of the struggles that we're going to have with Mars and Pluto before the conjunction, the closing conjunction. you want to think to what's not been settled during the opposition, because I feel that the opposition between Mars and Pluto has been very aggressive, and it's kind of like it's been very aggressive, but it's been putting a lot of people in positions where it's like many people probably ask me, what do you want me to do about that? You want me, even so much so people ask, okay, you want me to die, provide euthanasia. Like if it's that terrible and you care about the topic so much, I'm like, okay, provide assisted death. um, and and what's not been settled, we're going to meet it in square relations with Pluto, uh, with Mars Pluto right after the eclipse. Now, things that I'm looking at, I know that I have been pulling these charts a lot, and the reason being is because that those are very important charts that go through very important transits. So for Ketu, ruled by Mercury, conjuncting Zendaya, this is Mercury return for Geertje Wilders. That is a right-wing leader in Netherlands that did, he pulled a thing a while ago. I tried to broadcast that, um, where he maneuvered to drop the government, and basically he wants to try again to be a prime minister, which is all in coherence with everything that he's been saying so far. Um, so we might see something around that, and and that might mean that to get there he will have to perhaps make some compromises that he will struggle his way out of later. And this is fated, okay? And another chart that I have been looking at a lot, but it's impossible not to. The solar eclipse is sitting pretty with the exact degree of Saturn return for Mark Rutte, Secretary General of NATO, and the Mars ingress to Scorpio would be Mars return for Mark Rutte, which means it opens in 2.5 year cycle of natal Mars when Pluto is squaring the natal Mars. Why is that important for the world? For as per the Saturn return, I think all the things that have been around will probably have their sorting out. Okay, whether it's scandals, whether it's disputes, whether it's anything Saturn related, and that would probably be sorting itself out or have implications and so on. The Saturn return will Saturn return, but the Mars ingress, which is the Mars return with Pluto still very tightly squaring that Mars, is going to affect us in the world a lot, because we have a prominent leader in a military position that is going through the personal transit of oscillation between my way or the highway and too accommodating for its own good. That is the Mars Pluto square. I think we began to see the Pluto squaring natal Mars with the Delhi summit, and the question about there is a question of needing to set more boundaries with United States. And July 4th, that went perhaps unnoticed, but there was a commander that came into office, an American commander that came into NATO office. He had to go on the 4th of July to Brussels, to Belgium at least, I don't know if it was Brussels, but Belgium, to have the ceremony of being accepted into NATO and into his position. So that's something that we already began to see behind. And I don't know, with those things, you cannot say one person is responsible, especially not when you take the consultations and the what people call mind control, and that's basically a set of communications that goes into channeling astral realm, and there are various forms and ways of having communication, and that is all the things that can be a part of that. Actually, Mars, Pluto aspects in general can be setting our sovereign decision in the face of mind control, hidden tactic, gaslight, and manipulation. And this is very fascinating because we're talking about the head of the military alliance that is enforcing MK Ultra, okay, because that's a part of a war tactic, okay. It's one case of that, with the person at the head of that. Basically what he has to be sovereign in the face of is MK Ultra, all the while upping up the budgeting for his military alliance. Okay, it's basically crowdfunding, so to speak, and setting the tone. And the hard aspects can be perhaps a crisis of being exposed to new hidden ways of mind control that were meant to affect his direction, because Mars is direction. Okay, Mars is also about being decisive and taking action. And the crisis point is usually about, hey, there's this new thing that one didn't take into account, or there's this new thing coming up, or there is that thing in the back of the mind that was always there. With Pluto in Aquarius, I saw advertisements about a year ago that asked, can Mark Rutte be replaced with AI? Meaning, can the Secretary General of NATO be replaced with AI? Which I found very interesting, to say the least, and being informed of some of the procedures and practices that go into the creation of a person in such a position, and the decision making behind that, the teams that run the teams that run the teams, and the many chaoses and dramas that they create along the way. Then it is, I'll throw some snippets at you. A lot of people transmute sexual energy to have better achievements in sports and stuff. There are folks using sexual energy to try to create rapport and synchronicity, and then to try to not just siphon energy or something like that, but also try to read the memories, because it's electric activity basically. Try to read the memories and frequency of the person, and to affect their decisions in certain ways, whether it's to, hey, I'm sending people to war, or other things, okay? And there's a lot that's going behind the scenes about that. Many campaigns, okay, one of the things I've been exposed to was, yes, around topics that I tend to, okay, so to speak. And suffice to say that, which for me was a profound process of being aware, okay, of certain facets that are not so commonly talked about in the creation of people. And that's very likely to affect basically the entire world, because we are going to be watching a person standing sovereign in the face of all these military operations, that he's the head of the organization that those operations are linked to, with the training of the soldiers, but way, way, way more than that. So this is a tremendous crisis. I can try to reflect back, because Pluto's been, it was my Pluto square. We have the exact same degree. Mine is the Pluto, there is the Mars. And I'm trying to reflect back um, and see those things, because there was, it's very, it's very challenging to see both yourself and another chart going through a crisis that has the similar undertones to it. Um, but yeah, that's been quite intense, and I don't know how much of that will be exposed, um, but I think that this is going to be very interesting. It's going to affect a lot of decisions, and the fact that Mars is returning on that point to square Pluto um, is something that has a worldly importance. Um, and right before that, we have a solar eclipse. It's not on the any personal points like sun, moon, or ascendant, but it is with the Saturn return retrograde on the degree of the original Saturn. I think it's 28 or 27. Charts I know like the palm of my hand by now. NATO year has been busy. So this has been quite intense, and the eclipse will be some fated event. Now, with Mercury, Zendaya, and Venus, it's going to have a certain detail that has to do with a certain connection. Okay, so if it's diplomatic relations, they're going to be a certain. Oh, I think about the text message that was up front. Yeah, there was a text message. It's just a text message that was written to Trump, and then Trump displayed it outside, and so on. And I think that's something like of that sort, because Mercury is detail, and Venus is connection, and here it can simply be a text message being exposed, or a picture being exposed. People are like, it's gonna be tapes. It's gonna be tapes. I'm like, well, look to the lunar eclipse. That's the tapes one. That's the Epstein one. This one is very likely it's going to be some sort of detail that's going to be either exposing or leaking or whatnot. Recovered Nokia memory. Recovered Nokia memory. I cannot mention the name Mark Rutte without doing a jab. It's impossible. And and that is something that again is going to be very likely the eclipse that shakes up the world, simply by the merit of its being a Saturn return of a prominent leader and a Mars return with Pluto squaring it. So from an astrological perspective, it's always very interesting to see how that component of, and this is, for example, for those who ask, could Mark Rutte be replaced by AI? Could our prime minister be replaced by AI? Could the West be replaced by AI? Well, does the AI have a chart? Because it has, and perhaps we can predict the algorithmic decisions. For example, if our AI had a Mars return square Pluto at this point, we would probably get quite some similar patterns of the AI trying to beat mind control and trying to beat people affecting its algorithm, because this is deep learning, it's machine learning, and way deeper things that I'm not profoundly guess I haven't studied that all that deeply. But this is exactly what we would predict from AI as well. So if we are trying to get rid of the human factor with AI, I think we are going to be profoundly unsuccessful from the vantage point and prediction of astrology. And yet when we think that there is a person, we see a person, of course we know there is a team behind the person, but there's also a team behind the many persons inside the person. And behind them there is a team behind the team, and it's kind of working like a neural network, to be very honest. So those are my September eclipses thoughts. So it's going to be a lot of social engineering and a lot of exposure of real omens, okay, not just noise. There's noise and there is omen, or signal and noise. There are going to be a lot of signals. There are going to be a lot of things that are actually true that are exposed, and yet the maneuvers around them, that is probably the lunar eclipse and the debates around choice. Will it get to voting? I don't know, because it can be. The procedure of voting maybe can be also discussed, or some scandals around procedures of voting. And then the solar eclipse is going to be quite ecliptic, but because, again, of what it brings, on a diplomatic level, the ingress of Mars to Scorpio right after the eclipse is going to be dramatic. Okay, it's Mars in its home sign, and Pluto in Aquarius. One could argue Pluto is in Aquarius at home, because this is where we have scientific revolutions, the French Revolution, the American Revolution. So these are two planets in very strong position, and a very tight struggle, that are of equal, okay, they have Mars in Leo and Cancer did not have the equal, was not equal to Pluto. The best Mars could do is like, hey, they're gonna drop A-bombs where I'm at, okay, because Mars is right where the Hiroshima and Nagasaki fell. It's got like, hey, we better settle this down in a way that is not violent, because this is going to be A-bombs. It's not going to be anything less. If ever, only more. And Mars in Scorpio is an equal, more of an equal competitor or an equal combatant to Pluto. That deserves a video of its own. The eclipse is going to be, the solar eclipse is going to be trining Uranus, which means that it's going to be unexpected. Okay, so Uranus will Uranus, and Uranus conjoins Sedna. And that eclipse will also trine Pluto, have a lovely kite shape in the sky. So we don't know what will be. We're all going to be looking, we're going to be doing a great leap backwards to be transformed, and then this Mars-Pluto competition. So my prediction is that if we thought we heard the name Mark Rutte up until now, it's not even started yet. And as for the previous eclipses, or as for the other things that are happening in Netherlands and so on, I predict there are going to be more maneuvers, and they might have to do with trade and currency. So, because Uranus is already in Gemini, and Mercury ruling over Uranus is going to be fluctuation of markets. I know Wilders wanted to bring Gilden, or kind of like a Dutch currency, and do an exit. So it's bringing some very, very fascinating things to the table. And I've been saying, will Geertje bring us Gilden, and that might be the unexpectedness um, that may stir up a wave of challenging the one God, one coin, one currency, one government, one thing, and and even for the cynics, it's going to raise some points for thought that we, the people, can later take on, and see where are the people leading from that point on. All in all, September is going to be interesting, unexpected. We are going to be revisiting some topics, and some new information is going to come out. We are all going to be transformed, okay? So we are going to be moving forward to a situation that we actually previously been in, and we are going to be transformed by it. And then the Mars square Pluto, which deserves a video of its own. The Mars square Pluto is a very, very tight competition where each and every one of the two, and I think I don't want to say summarize that, but when I addressed the AI topic, I think I began to kind of get what it's about, and yet there's going to be many surprises. So none of us can predict not the surprises and not the response. With Uranus, we have to remember that chaos works differently with different people. So different Uranus have different view on chaos, and their inner chaos, and they're thriving in their own chaos. It can be in square relation, in harmonious relations to transit in Uranus, which I also addressed in my previous work.